I'm Mama Gina, and I am back with another stellar friend of mine, writer Eddie Presley. And I'm just not going to waste any time talking about him because we're going to be doing that for the whole time that we chat. I'm just really looking forward to this because he's an all around nice guy. And I'm curious about the creative process. So, Eddie, say hi to the folks and tell them what you do.
Hey, folks. Currently, I'm a writer. I've written two books in a series I'm doing that's currently up on Amazon. I've also been known to play music occasionally, and I can do art if I have to.
I like it. I like it. Do you find that things translate differently across those media?
It's really interesting because sometimes I will say yes, but most of the time I'll say no. I can always root everything back to music. Even
Cool.
when I was little, um, music always had a wonder for me. It always had a kind of romantic quality, a kind of a mystery quality. And I started listening with my dad's reel to reel tapes, listening to Mamas and the Papas and Tom Jones and the Beach Boys and whatever he had to play. And we listened to that kind of stuff. And then that rolled into movies with all the music from like Disney movies and stuff. And then finally, I would kind of branch out to find things on my own that I wanted and things that I could find. Um, Not nothing terribly outrageous to start with, mostly just what my parents liked.
Yeah.
But as I grew up, I would find my own things with my own money and I would hoard them and listen to them incessantly. And from those things, a lot of art ideas, a lot of writing ideas, just how to communicate between people, between artists. A lot of that came from music. Um, so I always kind of start there in the process. I like right now, I have a playlist of the characters I'm writing. They have songs that go with them.
That is so cool. I hear a lot of writers talk about their playlists of that they listen to or that they refer to when they're writing. And I think for me that's so unusual because I need complete quiet when I'm writing.
Yeah.
Unless I'm making the music. I need like absolute silence. I go into the woods for 5 days and just don't talk to anybody and just listen to what's inside my head as opposed to out of it. I just think that's such a cool thing. Does the playlist happen organically, or do you like specifically seek out songs that have some type of theme or something like that when you're putting it together?
Well, a lot of times something will have come from a nugget within a song. And sometimes they're great songs like symphonies.
Oh,
Sometimes they're just things you love to listen to on the radio from when you grew up. Like Styx has a song called Fooling Yourself, and they have a song called
yeah.
Crystal Ball. And
Yeah.
those two songs are directly tied in to one of my main characters. And it's like they exist together. They came from each other. That was the way I think about it. And other times, as I'm listening to something, it will spark an idea. But if I'm writing, um, I can't listen to a lot of words with music with words because then I
Yeah.
start writing what I'm hearing. But I'll listen to a lot of any form of instrumental music because it's just something about it just really is inspiring to let that creativity, to let that inner whatever kind of come through and manifest itself on the page.
How cool is that? So, where do you think that thing comes from that manifests itself through you?
Well, if I go back into family lore, everybody in my family is a musician or they're a musician and a priest.
Ah,
So there's a lot of that in my family line. There's a lot of people who play music, and a lot of those people who played music, at least on the men's side of it, are in some form of ministry. So I think a lot of it kind of started with that spirituality. My mom, for sure, when I was little, we were always in church with her, and she was a bright pillar of just that spiritual fire. And so I had that. So that tied with the stuff on my dad's side with the musicians and the priests. I think I could not be anything other than some form of creative person. Um, it's spiritual and however you may want to think about it, coming from the
Mm-hmm.
universe, coming from God, coming from goddess, whatever that might be, your higher self. I do know there are things that I've spent hours writing that I cannot account for what was written. I'll just read it back going, who wrote this? But it's just things that just come through, and sometimes it's just pure labor, just chopping words.
Right. I hear you, but I certainly cannot disentangle my spirituality and the art that I create, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's, you know, jewelry, polymer clay work. I mean, whatever it is, it's all done in sacred space. If I have to create that sacred space in the middle of the woods, or whether it's, in my studio is sacred space. I don't know how to disentangle those two things. And it always amazes me when I hear people say, oh, I just think of this idea and I do it. And I'm like, that is so foreign to me completely.
Yeah, well, there are people who are super planners. They plan and they go, well, it's basically done because I've done all this planning work and I've written these outlines and I've done these charts. And I'm like, you, I'm like, that's foreign to me. That kind of stuff is foreign. I definitely am kind of sit down and let the vibe kind of roll and see what comes out.
Yeah. So you've talked about the playlist kind of being a way for you to get that thing flowing in you. Are there any other things that you do to cut? Because inspiration doesn't always strike. I mean, I know I might sit fallow for days unless I put myself in a situation where I can be open to that flow, whatever it is. What do you do to make that happen?
Well, you've got to have time for yourself for sure, and you do have to have impetus and action and other things. But what I find when I sit down, if I don't want to write or I'm just not feeling it, I do have to kind of tell myself, if this is not happening, don't sit here and wallow in the not happening. Get up and do something else and then come back. And sometimes if I just sit down and start writing or start creating, start doing something, it will come and it will flow and I can get into it that way. But there are times when no, it's just not going to happen. And I have, it's a real thing where I have to stop and go, this isn't happening. Get up, stop this, because you're
Uh,
just banging and banging into a wall and that's
yeah.
nothing there's going to happen. But if I'm sitting down, I do have to have the music has got to be there, and I will set like I will make sure I'm by an open window so I can hear outside, I can hear things, and I will have some form of incense or something going on because that'll instantly kind of tell my brain you're sitting down for a magical moment and you're separating from the real world just for a moment.
I love that. Very wise. Very, very cool. So, what are you writing these days? Are you working on the next book in the trilogy, or what's coming through?
Well, I thought I was going to do something for this website that it kind of just popped up on Facebook to do a short story. So I did a short story about somebody finding a notebook, a little like a moleskin journal, and they found it, but they discovered when they wrote there, they're going to use it like a wish book. You write it down on your
Ooh.
list, and you manifest it into the universe because you've written it down and you have your little board. And but they kind of found out that it writes back to them and tells them where these things are. Like if they go, um, I rent for the month, then it'll go, there's a can in a car in Texas that has cash in an envelope, and they give him the date and the time to go get it. And so
Oh
he
my
just goes and
gosh.
gets it. Yeah, and it just gets deeper and deeper until it's like, how far are they willing to go? And when it comes up that they mistakenly murder somebody that they didn't need to murder, they just thought that was the way to go through. to get a substantial amount of money, then they kind of go back to the place where they found the book and they put it back. And then, of course, somebody comes on behind them and will pick it up and go on. But that didn't pan out into anything. So, but that was okay. But the big project, yeah, is the next part in the trilogy that I'm working on. I'm slogging away at that.
Some days it does feel like slogging, doesn't it? I think that's the most challenging time. I feel like I have to put on different hats almost every day. There is the inspired writer's hat, and that's the easiest one for me to wear because it doesn't feel like I actually have anything on my head. It's just straight into crown chakra, just wide open, creative. Whatever happens, happens. And if I hate it at the end of the day, I throw it out, which is more than 50% of the time. I kill a lot of my children. Um,
Yeah,
but then the slogging part for me isn't the writing. The slogging part for me is the recording and the production, and especially the marketing and reaching out. That's the slogging part of the artistry for me. And I've heard people who are really good at all of those things talk about how they create that they are artists in that vein too. And I haven't found that mindset yet. It's like I keep doing it, hoping that one day I will open up and go, oh, I am an artist of marketing. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I have not figured that out yet, the slogging away.
yeah. I've not really discovered the path through that, but trying to move through it at least a little bit, I've kind of discovered you kind of discover your place in the world and things sometimes. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of discovered my place in the in what I'm trying to do as a writer. Because I come from, and I'll probably go back to having another job. But right now my job is doing this. And
Yay.
and coming from where I was, it was always, well, you're pretending to be a writer. You kind of get your word out when you want to. You do this, but then having to kind of sit in it and figure out what you are, being able to say, well, no, I am a writer is empowering. The next step is, how do I engage that world? And the slog is kind of going, well, you're not going to turn the world on with one book or two books. This is a process. And my process now is I'll get these three books out. And I've been able to say, well, you've learned with each one, you've grown with each one. And the fourth one will be like the real one. And that's when I'll lock into trying to find agents and trying to find marketing and stuff. This is all kind of the setup to get to it. And I wouldn't say it's practice, but some of it's kind of practice. I know it's not, first books aren't great, second books aren't real great, but I can find a voice and I can be proud in what I'm doing, and I don't have to tell myself I'm just pretending. I can craft and hone and own what I do and make positive steps forward.
Yeah. Wow. Do I hear that? I look back on the music that I was writing 10 years ago, that I was writing 25 years ago, and I can always see a steady progress. But I think it's only because I keep doing it. If I stop, I don't know that, like if I stopped for 5 years, I don't know that I would pick up right where I left off. I feel like I would lose some of my momentum in the process and some of the craft and the artwork that goes with it. Um, and I, man, do I hear you about the I'm not a writer in your head kind of thing, because I still hear myself in musician groups where I'm an active member and we're talking about our music or we're talking about whatever it happens to be in the industry. And I'll say, well, I'm not really a musician. And I'll hear it come out of my mouth. And every time I'm like, you've put out all these solo CDs. You've been performing since you were 16. You are a musician. But I have this thing in my head that says, to be a musician, you must know all of this theory and you must have a master's in, music, and and I don't have those things, and so I continually try to self-sabotage, and I have to catch myself every time, because this is the self-doubt that can cripple us is crazy as
Yeah.
artists, but we have to just keep doing it.
Well, it was the difference between kind of doing it at all and not doing it. I've written all my life. I've been in art school. I went to art college. I've been creative. I've been in bands and played music. So I can create. I know what that stuff is. But then when you kind of start into something and you're like, well, what was your identity for so long? Well, it was in retail. I didn't hate it. I liked helping people. It's not for everyone. I did it, but then because you're so invested in others and in serving, which is not a terrible thing, but you can sometimes lose uh, that thing that makes you go, well, no, I am this. I am a creative person. I do this well. It did kind of moving away into kind of looking at it, doing it for real with other writers and other agents and other people who talk and spend their lives doing it. I found out where I was, what level I was, but that's a good platform from which to grow, and I can grow from that and learn by doing. And I kind of, you know, my art teacher in school always used to say her big thing was, well, you learn the rules so that you can successfully start breaking the rules.
Yes.
And I've always said that. Everyone's like, well, you got to do this way and you've got to do that. I'm like, I didn't do that when I was a writer. I certainly didn't do it when I was doing art in college, you know. So I'm going to learn the rules and learn the basics of what it is I'm doing, and then I can then go from there to learn how to do it well. So that's my process right now, is learning to do it well.
That's wonderful. Do you work with other writers as far as like groups, where you can just kind of talk about the art of writing, or anything like that? Any kind of accountability partnering or anything like that? Have you found any of that helpful?
Of some of it certainly online, because now you can reach out to a lot of people, and with COVID you can't really, there's not a lot of groups gathering for anything.
Right.
That'll come back, but certainly online you can do that, and people will, tell you their experiences, and you can reach out and talk to agents, and they'll tell you. And when you start talking to them, it's not that the art of it goes out the window, but there's a little business side of it that you do have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody's like, well, my book is blah blah blah, and then they'll go, we see 100 of you in a day. If we're looking, there are levels of professionalism that we're looking for, and we get hundreds of submissions. So when we say we're actually looking at things on the first page, we're looking at grammar on the first page, we're looking at a hook on the first page, we're looking for a synopsis where you can take your entire 150,000 word book and crush it down into 500 words.
Right.
We're looking for those things. And so that's a growth area that you struggle with. That's the next thing, is like, well, how do you move into the business of that and the marketing of it and the talking to people who do it for their living? So there's the difference there, but you got to start somewhere and you got to learn by doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think you'd be writing even if you weren't publishing your books?
Well, that's what a lot of people say is, well, I like, they'll say on Twitter, they'll be like, well, nobody interacts and nobody does anything. So why do I even bother? I'm like, because it's what your soul needs. It's
Yes.
what you need to do. I listen to music because my soul needs it. I do art because my soul needs it, and I create because I need it. If you're doing it for engagement or for likes on Twitter, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Anybody can put out a big bunch of garbage and get people talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's like, is my engagement really huge in that way? No, but that's okay, because this is exactly what I want to write. And as I learn by taking online classes and talking to people, each book gets a little bit closer. And that fourth book is my goal, to say, hey, I want an agent who does this for a living to take a look at it and sell this book for me.
How spectacular is that? So, in these times of COVID, unfortunately, I think some of us are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and starting to get vaccinated, and maybe seeing a way to return to being back, with folks. Although I'm a hardcore introvert, so it's really
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword for me. But with COVID, for this past year and change, how has that changed your writing? Has it changed your habits? Has it changed your subject matter? Has it changed anything at all?
It's changed how I like perceive myself and how I want to do it. I can remember my last, because our job went away. It closed up and said, well, COVID's here. We're going to go do like everybody else did for 2 weeks or a month or whatever. We're going
Mm,
to shut the doors and we're going to go home. And while I was at home and I had a chance to kind of think about what was I doing and why was I doing it, and then we went back. And when I went back, I was just like, not that I not that I hated it or hated anyone, but that reality of what is your soul doing here? Why is your creative spirit here? And it's like, this is not, even I know that I'm going to need a real job eventually, probably, because I'm not really selling anything. I'm just kind of getting the groundwork started. But I knew that that wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, or at least for a while. It was like, because all my time was involved in that.
yes.
And so I said, no, no, thank you. And I put the work into setting up a routine, setting up work here. And where I had knocked out one book in years and years and years and years of trying to work in retail and then work at home, I got two books out very quickly. So now I'm on the
Congratulations.
third. Yeah, now I'm on the third. And they're not written from start to finish. I've been working on things a long time, but being able to take the time to learn how to publish it myself and put it together and do art and all that stuff, set up a small platform. Yeah, I finally had the time to do it. And I was like, I can breathe. Oh, there's life.
Priorities, right? All it takes is getting off the hamster wheel for just a little while for us to see the possibilities that are sometimes so hard to see when we're all we're doing is getting up every day and going to work and coming home and collapsing. And yeah, yeah, I totally get that. When I walked away from, I had a corporate job, to raise my son. It was totally chosen. I totally did it on purpose. But when I was able to walk out of that job, that last day, it I literally saw a cloud come out of my chest in the elevator as the elevator doors were closing. It was like, wow, have I been holding on to that all this time? I mean, I knew what I was stepping into. I knew I was leaving that job to be a musician on the road, and I knew that failure was not an option, and all
Yeah,
of those things, but I didn't realize how much I was holding on to, and it's just that release finally that says, okay, now here's what's really important, and everything suddenly comes into focus. It's such an amazing feeling, and I don't think enough people take that opportunity under normal circumstances,
right.
because sometimes they don't even see that it is an opportunity. And I think that COVID, in a bizarre way, allowed people to be in a position to shift their focus and realize what their true self wanted, what their priorities really could be if they could only imagine it, and it gave them the space to do that. Because honestly, I've seen an explosion of people releasing music and writing and painting and doing things that they never would have had the time for. And I think it's kind of beautiful that we've turned something really awful into um, something potentially wonderful for the world around us.
Yeah, I can remember walking out and just I kind of knew that it was that I wasn't coming back. That one time when I did it, I looked around at people I had trained, people I liked. I mean, I loved our little crew. They were great people. And I just looked up at them because what were we doing? Our store was being used as a warehouse. It wasn't open. And we were going around in circles because it's a store, it's not a warehouse, nothing's laid out, pulling things for customers for online orders.
Mm.
And it was just as fast as you can go until it was done. And I looked up at those guys and I said, that was really awful. I'm sorry to you, to those people. I'm sorry because that was really awful. That was awful. And they all kind of shrug their shoulders and they go, yeah, that was pretty bad. And I left that day. But you also don't realize the walls that you kind of put up between yourself and people when you're working like that. Customer service is what it is. You can either do it or you're bad at it. You know how to put up your barriers, you know how to put up your shields and your protection. You know that, but even with all that, once you kind of let it go for a little while, you realize what a burden maintaining that so constantly was. And
Yeah.
it was a great relief to be able to just say for a moment, I'm free of that. I'm free of it. I can let it go.
You are speaking my language. So when you were playing music on a more regular basis, what was that like?
Well, that was a lot of fun. That was one of the first places. Well, I in not in elementary school, but in junior high, I was in band, so I learned music. I was not good at being a trumpet player. I could do it, but then I learned my music. But then I remember very distinctly, about 13 years old, I was in Huber Heights, Ohio, at the Dollar Theater by
Yeah.
myself, and I was allowed to go see "The Kids Are All Right" by The Who,
Oh yeah.
and it was amazing. That changed my life. I saw because I play bass guitar, and I saw their bass player John Whistle playing, and it changed my life. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to express myself in some way, and so eventually, when I did get into bands, I knew a little bit about music and how to kind of talk music. I had a vocabulary, but being in a room with two other guys or three other guys and just creating your own stuff, playing what you want to play, and finally, because you reach um, this kind of interconnected space with your beings, it's amazing how intimate you can be with someone, and all you're doing is standing there and allowing what they have in them to become part of what you have in you, and you create something. I can remember we wouldn't even have to talk, we could just start playing and creating, and that was amazing. And then playing it live, people go like, well, what bands do you play? It's like, we don't cover any bands, this is all our own music. It's an hour of just us, so strap in.
Yeah.
But we loved it, we loved it. It was all of our own influences, it was just what we wanted to play. And we didn't ask for, we didn't apologize, didn't ask for forgiveness, we just played what we wanted to play. And there was nothing more creative that you can do with people than sitting down with music and letting what's in their soul be part of what's in your soul for a little while.
Yeah, I think it's one of the purest forms of communication that there is. And whether it's between band members or whether it's between the band and everybody that's listening, because that's a form of communication as well. It's there is nothing like it, and I don't even know how to describe it. You just described it really well, but I don't even know how to translate that into normal speak for people who haven't had that experience, because it's a type of, it's not just communication, it's a complete openness. It's like the best kind of dialogue in the world where nobody has an agenda. Everybody is just in the room and sharing ideas and mixing and blending and adding and subtracting, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the most amazing thing in the world. And that moment when everybody is in their thing, but everybody is listening so intently, and then something amazing happens and everybody just opens their eyes at the same time, kind of thing. It's, yeah, I always, I mean, I loved that collaborative thing that happened, but I also hated most of the musicians that I worked with long term because they're just a bunch of flakes and crazy people, and you can't get them to focus on anything practical. And you know, if you want to be an artist in this world, you still got to pay your bills.
Mm.
And you know, trying to get that music to the stage and actually get paid for it is a whole nother animal. And I'm not saying you shouldn't make art for the sake of art, because I think everybody should. You know, find something. You don't even have to be good at it, you just do it. But because you are compelled to do it, or you're called to do it, or you're just curious
Mhm.
about it. but but I, you know, I was in a position where I wanted to be a full-time musician, and that meant I had to treat it on some level as a business all the time. And there's a reason I'm a solo artist
Yeah.
in this world, because there was just a point where I was like, when I hit 50 and walked away from the corporate job and decided, you know what, I want to go play music. And I actually had offers from a couple of large pagan groups to come join them. And I said, I love all of you. And in my head, I was thinking, but y'all fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't want to be on the road with all of you 24/7, 52 weeks a year. And I've done that with bands. I've My first full-time band, I was on the road for years with them. You know, 18, I'm on the road full time. 52 weeks a year, 6 nights a week, travel on
Yeah.
the seventh day, right? And you play every single night in a bar somewhere. But I needed the space to create in my own head. And what I'm finding now is that I'm able to do the collaborative thing. Um, and I'm good with that as long as it's like a one off, or, you know, something like that. I don't, you put all those egos in the room and it gets hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, people always kind of look at big road acts, sign major label people, and they're like, well, how could they just break up? How could they walk away from something? Or how could this original member have just left after their first album that was so big? It's like, because you're more intimate with those people. The only thing more intimate, it would be actually married to somebody. You're so intimate artistically and in people's lives that you can either handle it or you can't. And
Yeah.
you break up because it's perilous to your soul in some cases. You do have to walk away from it. You don't have a mind to be on the road and see it as a business. You have to walk away from it. And that's one thing that we would kind of learn. It's like, well, here you might be in Georgia, somewhere outside of, well, where we Plains, Georgia. And you're like, well, what the hell am I doing here? Is this something I want to do? And people have to think for themselves. This is a business where we have to be supportive and we have to be there for each other.
Yes.
If we want to be in a room just creating, we can go back home and do that.
Mm.
And so it kind of sorts the people out who can and can't do it. Some people can only do it in a group. Some people have to be on the road in front of people. Some people can only do it alone by themselves.
Yeah.
It's just, who are you? You gotta find that. And sometimes that's really hard. My first group was really all about, well, we're just going to take all the things that we love and dump them into music and do it. And then that kind of went away. That was okay. Second group was, we were playing out. Well, we're going to play, but then every decision is about the business of playing, and it's very different.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. I was fortunate that I learned kind of both sides at the same time. I learned the creative side and the performance side at the same time that I was learning the business side. Because that first band was 52 weeks a year. I mean, we literally for 3 years, I didn't have a day off. You know, that's what
Yeah.
we did. And when you're living with people like that in hotel rooms, you know, from one
Mm-hmm.
place to another, that's, you know, and you're traveling together, and it's just, it's it's a crucible, right? You know, and it was wonderful. And honestly, I've loved every band I've ever been in, at least at the beginning.
Yeah,
And the ones that I've had to walk away from, at some point, either because they just naturally run their course or because I just couldn't do it anymore because it, you know, something was missing, whether it was the music or whether, you know, whatever it is. Sometimes it's the music that goes, sometimes it's the artistry that disappears, and sometimes they're just all complete screw ups, and you can't hitch your
yeah,
wagon to them anymore. But yeah, and I've seen so many people stop being artists because they become disenchanted with all the businessy stuff. And that always breaks my heart. It's like, can't you find a way to outsource that stuff so you can
yeah.
keep being an artist, you know?
Well, and the opposite, people who started off being an artist, and not that I can speak for somebody like Stevie Nicks or something like that, but when you pull back that curtain a little bit, all of their decision making is caught up in this band for this label putting something out. Like even the band Yes, this monolithic, huge
Oh,
band,
oh,
never not a monster band.
right.
And they have stories about this decision that we did this was done strictly because this is what the label was going to have us do. This was a strictly a labeled. It's like these guys are super creative, they're super all that, but pull that curtain back, they've got responsibility to the business side. It's not just John Anderson being all lovey and light and
Right.
singing, and we just create music. And it's
Mm.
like no, they're beholden to people who need to make money off them, and it drives a lot of their decisions.
Yeah, the more people in the band, the more stuff that goes on too, and the not just the more people in the band, but the more people that you involved in all of that. It just becomes this kind of tiered thing that the top is going to fall off eventually. You know, it's going to explode. Yeah.
Well,
As an aside, you mentioned Yes, which is whether it was Yes proper at any given point or some combination thereof, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe,
mhm.
and Steve Howe by himself. I have seen those people more live than any other musical artists, because I love them so much. And there was a point 100 years ago where my drummer and I took a trip to Orlando to watch um, Yes in the Round, and it was the reunion tour, and so everybody was there,
Oh yeah.
like everybody was there, and I wept all the way back home. Um, and Tom's driving. He says, "Why are you crying?" I'm going, "I'm never gonna be in a band with people that are just that talented." And he's like, "Am I chapped liver?" I'm like, "You know what I mean?"
Me, Bill Bruford was
Bill
playing on that
Bruford,
stage.
holy, oh my God, Bill Bruford. Yeah, that just sends me.
But
Those,
even on that tour, all those musicians, all their own individual agents,
yep,
two different record labels because they had
yes,
Anderson, Rupert Wakeman now, and they had
yes,
the Yes, actual Yes band. And what happened after that,
mm,
it imploded and changed all over again because
yep.
these people, it was all business. It was all behind the scenes business after that.
I know, and it was, but it was magic on stage,
It was magic on
and
stage, and that thing is great. That moment of creation, that moment of inspiration is beautiful, and if you can marry the two and get along, that's awesome.
yeah,
And that's kind of where I've done it before in other situations, and this whole writing thing is new, but that's my next stage, is being able to marry that practical business side with that sitting down and letting goddess come and create
right.
your.
Right. It's like I said, different hats for different moments. I literally have days where I'm going into mixing mode, and so I have to stop being the songwriter. I have to stop being the producer. That's really hard for me because I found that I really love production. I love adding all the little ear candy and tidbits and stuff, right? But getting into that just mixing mode, or, or the next mode, which is okay, now we need the artwork. So I've got to find my artist and I've got to get this done, and I've got all of that. I literally have to like take a different hat and put it on and say, I'm not going to be these other people today. And it is hard sometimes to do that. It really, really is. Just, and I'm just one person. Can you imagine having a whole stage of people who are all doing that in their own careers, and they're all trying to drive this one bus just for this one tour in one
Hmm.
direction? And yeah,
With some of
it's,
them hating each other,
yeah,
some of them loving each other.
yeah, yeah. And, and I think I, I, artists that actually do art, that actually pick up their craft like frequently, if not every day, almost every day. Um, I think that we're kind of a unique breed because we are off center, and we
Yeah,
know it for the most part, and we know that we don't really fit in with the rest of the world, but the rest of the world wants what we do. And that there's a membrane there between the two worlds, that it's really hard to slip in between and say, okay, here's my art,
yeah,
without destroying who I am at my core, and trying to follow some of the rules of creativity. Like you were talking about all these things that you're learning about the craft from other people in the writing, on the writing side of everything. All these rules that they're looking for, these things that are part of your craft but not necessarily part of writing a story. That, yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you definitely want to well, the trick there is learning where those things come together. And before I was all like, well, I'm going to write what I want to write, and they can lump it if they don't like it. But then the more you listen to them, they're like, well, there are people who are on a are on that level you think you are, but they're really on it, and we work with them and we know what real good writing is. And
yes,
so then you kind of start listening to them, and you let down that shield, let down that ego a little bit, and then you go, well, it's up to me to take what I do and bring it to them so that these things get married together. I'm not I'm not letting them tell me what to do, but I am bringing to the table something that can speak and communicate to other people and not just myself. So there's a little bit of that you kind of have to do that walk.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm part of a mixed feedback group that we meet twice a month. We share our stuff online, and then we get feedback from the instructor and from the classmates and everything. And it's really, really wonderful. We had somebody that joined the group about 3 months ago, and his stuff is, to my mind, freaking amazing. He takes like conversations out of YouTube videos or weird stuff that just happened, kind of thing. And then he does this patchwork where he plays music over it. He'll sample stuff out of the conversations. And it's very like what I would imagine Zawinul would be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like with words and music, and it's a patchwork of, it's like a quilt of music that he does. It has absolutely no popular value.
Right.
And so I am hearing an artist. I am hearing this guy that is freaking amazing, right? And there's a rhythm, but it's not a boom, 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 boom rhythm of
Right.
any kind. It's a natural rhythm that ebbs and flows, like Zawinul talked about. It's the music of the cities, right? Zawinul used to talk about every city has a feeling to it, and you go and you listen to that rhythm and the people walking and how quickly or how slowly they walk, or you know the language and how it flows and everything else. And I'm listening to this guy's stuff, and it's so amazing. everybody in the group keeps telling him, so like I really like this, but, and I want to reach out and I want to say to him, please don't stop doing this, because I think,
Right.
but there's not a market for it. And so he's either, if he wants to make money with this music, he's gonna have to find a way
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
market this stuff where there is currently no market. And I wonder sometimes, what's we have to draw a line somewhere, because we are unique. Our gifts are unique, and there are things that I think that we shouldn't compromise on just to have other people buy our stuff, if that makes sense.
Right. And that's the trick, is learning to not compromise, but to understand what people who are running a business need from you as an artist. Like, I would not want to compromise the ideas of what I have, but there again, if they're going to pay me $50,000 in advance to write a specific story, I might write a very specific story for $50,000 in advance. That's one thing. But I can listen to them and go, well, a typical story that people, and this was one of the key things that kind of keyed me in on it a little bit, it's different from music and from fine art, because that can be a whole greater range of just sensual expression for its own sake. But for this, people read in a very specific way because of the way books have been marketed to them. So
Mm.
when you pick up a book, if it doesn't do these certain beats kind of in a naturally progressing order, your brain goes, what is this? Why am I not connecting to this? Why isn't it drawing me along? It's like, well, and people, when they read older material, like even like Lord of the Rings, a classic book read by an Oxford professor who knows his language, would not allow anybody to edit him. But when you read it, what are you reading? Walls and walls of this old fashioned way of telling a story, not allowing the person to be in the story. You're removed from it. He's telling you a tale. And
Right.
so when people read it, they're like, well, why isn't it immediate like a modern story? Well, because we kind of change those things. Readers expect that. And when they kind of explain that kind of stuff to me, I was like, well,
Oh,
yeah, that's right. So I can bring what I do shaped to what they need. Now, if I'm writing a short story or doing something on my own, yeah, I'm going to write whatever I want, and nobody's going to tell me it's terrible. But if I'm bringing it to somebody who's going to invest their creativity and their money and their time into it, I can bring what I have to them and adapt to that format so that it's immediately engaging to more people in a weird way. It's kind of a thing that people, at first you want to react negatively to it, and I did, but then I learned
yeah.
this is an expectation in people's minds, so you're kind of coming to this market meeting that expectation a little bit.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, that makes total sense. That's a really good example I hadn't thought about, because I kind of love that older crafted uh uh novels, like Tolkien and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what I cut my teeth on. That's what I grew up with. And you're right, modern writing, it feels very different. Sometimes I feel like modern writing um is aiming at the lowest common denominator, and it makes me crazy
In
as a
some cases,
reader.
yes.
Yeah, it's like they're aiming for a fifth grade reading level or a seventh grade reading level, as opposed to, you know, diving into something and really chewing on it. But I'm also not a normal reader. I actually like complexity, so I get that.
Yeah, like for me, when I read, there you do need to know your market,
Yeah.
and you should read in your market so you know what's going on. And an agent or a publisher will have reams of spreadsheets to tell you why something is selling and what the trend is and what all that is. But if I'm reading, I'll read something outside of kind of like, I'm finding that other things are more interesting. Like there's a writer from Britain. His name is David Mitchell. He wrote Cloud Atlas,
Oh
and
yeah.
he is an amazing writer. He is that literary writer, modern writer that is like, oh, it's awe-inspiring to read some of his work. He's very good.
Nice.
Um, and so I'll read that, and the way he does a puzzle box of stories. It's not linear. It's puzzle
Yeah.
box. It's here's a part of it. Here's another part of it. Like Cloud Atlas is 6 short stories that are cut in half, and he goes the beginning of each one in order, and then the ending of them all in reverse order following. So it's kind of a puzzle box to get to the end. And to pull something off like that, that's inspiring. Reading another fantasy book, not terribly inspiring, but reading people who are just an artist beyond what I can do with the written word, and watch what they can do, that's inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. How very cool. So, where can people find your stuff right now? On Amazon or?
Mostly on Amazon. You can search my name, Eddie W. Presley. That'll find it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the first one is probably
Nice.
back.
Look at
It's probably
that.
backwards, but
Nope,
it's the
it's
holy.
perfect.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
perfect. It's
it's
the Holy
perfect.
White Fire, and the second one is the White Dragon,
Lovely.
and those are
Nice
all on Amazon.
covers. Nice
Yeah,
covers. It,
it's
you
what
know,
it's what you do when you don't have money.
yeah, but you know what? One of the things that I had to pay attention to is, album covers used to be like a nice frameable kind of piece of art. And nowadays, if you want people to click on your thing, it's a thumbnail. And so the art has to be like really graphic and poppy and simple lines. And those covers are like perfect for those thumbnails kind
Yeah,
of thing. I know it makes me sad that the way of really fancy book covers and album covers have gone away, but it's the world we live in. Another adaptation we made.
yeah. But I feel bad for kids when they can't sit down with Tales from Topographic Oceans for the first time and do a
Oh,
fold out and have the lyrics and the
oh,
pictures.
right, right. Yeah, I feel like we sacrifice some stuff. Most definitely, it's because I mean I grew up in those days, and those days are really kind of no more. It's really hard to find something that has lyrics. You have to go online if you want to find them. Here's a link to all the lyrics in my
Yeah,
songs, and yeah, it's frustrating, a little bit, but I could be like Seal and just not publish my lyrics ever.
yeah.
Seal
Well,
doesn't publish lyrics.
I went through a long phase where I would never read the lyrics when I first got the album. I had to just have an experience and have it impressed upon me. I was like, if I read the lyrics first, it'll ruin it. I have to just listen to the music and hear it and feel it, and then I could go back in and look at like the liner notes and all
Right,
that.
right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what is your website?
It's Eddie W. Presley, EDDIEWPRESLEY.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put a link there in the notes.
It's not
Um,
much there, but
hey, hey,
find me on Facebook.
there's stuff there. Find you on Facebook. People are allowed to find you on Facebook on your
Yeah,
regular page.
it will. You won't be able to see much on my regular page, but I do have an author page,
Oh,
Eddie
okay,
W. Presley, and I do have my own page too.
okay. I'll I'll get that author page link from you and make sure that on Facebook, and make sure that that goes with the notes too. And then Amazon link to your books so far.
Yeah, you can search my name, and I have a little author page, and all the
Excellent.
books will be there. And they're cheap right now. Amazon is selling them real cheap.
Yeah, yay, Amazon.
Yeah,
Another compromise we have all made
yeah.
to share our art.
Well, if I get my next publisher,
Yep.
whoever that turns out to be, they'll do all of that stuff and they'll put me into a place. My first publisher had me on all the websites and everything, and that was cool. But that taught me a lot. That taught me things to do, things not to do, things to look out for,
Yeah.
and talk about compromise. It was like yeah, you guys are going to publish it. You guys are putting the money in for it. And that compromise was splitting the book in half, writing a different ending. There's there you learn fast what they're going to
Yeah.
give you money to do it. You're going to do what they need you to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the books that I showed you are, one of them is virtually the same as the one I had previously published, but I was able to go back and complete it and fix it and present it as I wanted it.
Nice. Nice. Very nice. All right. Well, this is so cool. Oh my gosh. I am so glad that we had a chance to chat. This is so great. I am beyond excited about the prospect of being able to see people in real life again later this year, and I'm hoping that we get to bump into each other again. I miss people, I miss hugs, and that's saying a lot for this introvert.
Oh, for this OCD afflicted introvert, it's that's a lot for
Yeah,
me, yeah. But
yeah,
I do miss it as well. I'm like, can we get out to, some of our regular places? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so very much for hanging out, and I will definitely share your links, and I hope that folks pick up some awesome books by Eddie Presley. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.